Non-believer experiences to share, posted in the Paranormal subreddit by the Land of YRS. Let me preface this by saying I don't believe in paranormal activity, but I do understand there are many things we can't explain. Furthermore, having a bachelor's in psychology, I also admit our brains have a way of playing tricks on us. I do have a weak spot for good haunt ghost stories after seeing the ghost captured in a photo at Stanley Hotel in Estes Park this week. I thought I'd share a few of my brushes with the not yet explained. 1. In the late summer of 2001, easy date to remember, my girlfriend and now wife and I stayed at the Stanley for one night while visiting the area after her brother was married. We knew about the backstory with The Shining, but didn't know the reputation of the hotel still being haunted. We went to dinner in town and headed back to the hotel. My girlfriend wasn't feeling great, so she asked me to drop her off while I went to park the car. The lot is a good walk to the front door. I parked and assumed she made her way up to the room. Upon entering the room, I noticed it was dark and she was already under the blankets. Unfortunately, the only way to turn on the lights was on the lamp itself across the room. I walked in and asked if she was feeling okay. No answer. I then asked why the lights were off. Again, no answer. Now, I can see her laying in bed, or at least a shadow of her in bed. I'm pissed and walk across the room to turn the light on. Before getting to the light, I pass a mirror on the wall, and out of the corner of my eye I see someone in the room. A man in a suit. Tall, thin, or so I think. I freak out a bit, turn the light on, and start to yell at my girlfriend for trying to scare me. Once the light is on, I realize that she's not in the bed or even in the room, and I get goosebumps. I'm talking to no one. I walk down to the lobby and she's waiting for me at the bottom of the staircase. The episode freaked me out a bit and had trouble sleeping that night. I thought I had heard some odd noises all night and woke up a bunch of times. Obviously, it was all in my head and my eyes played tricks on me, but I would be hesitant to stay there again, not because of the ghosts, but that it's just an unsettling place. Number 2. When I was little, I would get sleep paralysis quite a bit. I always knew it was coming because I would start falling asleep and feel myself starting to spin. If I tried to wake up, I would open my eyes and be paralyzed for a bit and couldn't talk, yell, or scream. One time, I opened my eyes and I saw myself laying in bed on the bottom bunk and my brother in the top bunk. It usually took several attempts to open and close my eyes to wake and be able to be up. Mostly happened in my early teen years, but extended to late teens. 3. I had a really weird experience that I chalk up to olfactory hallucinations. I attended my grandmother's funeral when I was in college years. I was the only grandchild who didn't see her in the hospital before she passed, which was odd considering I was the oldest grandchild and probably closest to her. I lived with her for a year through my parents' divorce. While at the funeral home, I'm sitting next to my brother and mom, and I smell this horrible smell like rot. For a second, I'm really embarrassed for the funeral parlor because it was such a strong smell, thinking it was coming from the basement or something. I look around and nobody is talking about it, so I ask my brother, "What's that smell? It's awful." They both look at me like I was crazy as they didn't smell anything. I thought, how can this be? It's so bad. Then, all of a sudden, it was gone. 4. The jury is still out on this one. I really can't explain it. We moved to Minneapolis a few years ago and rented an older home built in the 1910 and 1930 time frame. It was small and had a small addition put on maybe 20 years ago. There were 2 bedrooms upstairs, one for me and my wife, and one for our 2-year-old. The whole place creaked and groaned when you walked around. The basement was finished and had a bedroom and a large living area that we converted to a play area for our son, just his toys, and he played down there quite a bit by himself. With us at the top of the stairs in the kitchen, we didn't leave him alone down there. My wife hated the basement because at the front of our house was an old cellar room that we just used for storage, and it creeped her out. Anyways, we were upstairs making dinner and heard our son talking. Typically, it was play stuff, but this time it was like a conversation. We listened for a while, smiling. Then we both realized that he's talking to someone. We rushed downstairs and see him, but nobody else. We asked him who he was talking to, and he told us, "The man with the orange hair who lives in the wall." I immediately opened the mechanical room to see if anyone was in there, opened the cellar room, checked out the whole basement, and brought him upstairs. Chalked it up to a playful imagination. 2 weeks later, out-of-town friends visited for dinner with their 2-year-old. As the boys were downstairs, the visiting boy ran up the stairs screaming, "There's a ghost downstairs." He was hysterical, and the mom had to calm him down. We played dumb, and they felt a little embarrassed. My wife and I agreed not to share this info with anyone due to the fact that we would no longer have visitors. Several times, my MIL would babysit and hear odd noises. She swore she was sleeping on the couch and heard a very loud scream in the house that woke her up, and she ran downstairs to check on her son, whom she was babysitting. My mom lived with us for 2 months and stayed in the basement. One night she awoke to find a bat in her room, and she flipped out and ran upstairs screaming. We didn't hear her, but she said she was loud and she couldn't have imagined it. We had a pest guy come and check around for bats or evidence of bats or rodents, and he found nothing. It was a one-time thing, but my mom was freaked out a bit. I had several instances of waking up in the middle of the night, hearing screams or yells, mostly male voices, but thought it was just dreams. I don't have those dreams since we've moved, though. Anyway, thanks for reading. It's nice getting these stories off my chest, and if anyone had any ideas that could explain some of this, please let me know. Thanks. Short and weird experience overseas, posted in the Paranormal subreddit by Tranjason. This happened at the end of 2012 in December, where I flew over to Vietnam. Usually our family is busy with work, so I just go with my parents, but this time my aunts, uncles, cousins came with. Our house in Vietnam got so full that I had to sleep in a nearby hotel. There were 2 beds and 5 of us, basically 2 people each bed, and I decided to set up some blankets and slept on the floor next to the underside of the bed. Very early in the morning, at around 4 a.m., I woke up. Whilst waking, I heard a soft hello. My left ear, which was facing towards the bed, underside, was blocked for some reason, but my right ear echoes with hello. By the sound I could tell it was a young male, and the accent was fluent. I don't know if this was just my head, but when I checked for the time, my ear was still blocked, while my right ear reminisces with hello. Can anyone tell me what this is? I'm still confused to this day. I lived in a haunted family home for most of my life, posted in the Paranormal subreddit by They Call Me Joe 82. I lived with my family, younger brother, elder sister, mom and dad, in a semi-rural country house in England for 18 years. The house sat on around 2 acres of land and had a converted garage apartment around the back. The first few years of living there, I never really noticed anything strange going on. Then it came to my attention that my sister, who was 15 or 16 at the time, was scared to use the upstairs bathroom at night. Being kids, this was all kept hush-hush from us, but I remember hearing her say to my mom that when she was at home alone and using the bathroom, the shadow of a person would go past the landing back and forth constantly, which she could see through the frosted glass and hear the footsteps of, and she would be too scared to leave until someone came home. This obviously spooked the crap out of me, and I started looking out for things as I constantly was aware of what I'd heard. The next incident came approximately 4 to 6 years later when my sister had come home from a night of working, and she was pulling up to the drive that leads to the front of the house. She said out of the corner of her eye, across the front lawn, she spotted a figure coming slowly at her. As it got closer, she suddenly realized it was completely transparent and had no legs, feet, or defining facial features. Her natural reaction was to slam the car in reverse and back down the drive and speed back off down the road, at which point she called the police and called my parents, who were out of town at the time, saying there was an intruder. So my parents tell her to wait until the police turn up, and when they do, they pretty much dismiss what she said as an overactive imagination. And this is where it starts to get interesting. Roll on a few more years, and I'm in my mid-teens, and my brother's in his early teens, and we're both hanging out in our kitchen around 2 a.m. I walk over to the sink, fill up the water, and look out the window and see what I can only describe as a distorted white featureless face staring right back at me, approximately 4 to 6 inches away through the window. I'm too scared to shout and just drop my glass and watch the thing literally float past the window while still facing me and disappear round the side of the house. I turn around and my brother asks me if I'm okay, and I describe what I've seen, and he looks at me like I'm crazy, but I can tell he's spooked. After this, more regular weird stuff starts to occur. The next weirdest event was when my folks had gone away for the weekend, and my brother and I were sitting in our living room watching TV when we hear a weird noise coming from the adjoining room. We both put on the TV and ask each other what it is. I put my head around the door and notice a jacket hanging is swinging like somebody had shook it, but the noise had stopped. The second I go back into the living room, the noise starts again, and we both go out this time. And the noise stopped as soon as we entered the room. The jacket is still swinging, and we notice it's fully zipped up, which is weird because who leaves a fully zipped up jacket on a hook? We both take note the zipper is right at the top of the jacket, and as soon as we settle in the lounge again, the noise starts. Getting braver, and jump up and enter the door to see the zipper slide up and down in a frenzied fashion, then stop halfway down, but stand straight on the end for a few seconds, then drop. And this is where it gets nuts. As soon as the zipper stops, we hear crazy bangs from the bedroom directly above us that are constant, like boom, 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 boom. And I start to think there's someone in this house, so I race to the study and take my old granddad's sword or bayonet out of its sheath and gingerly walk upstairs with my brother behind me. As soon as my foot stepped on the first step of the stairs, the banging stopped, and me, armed with a sword, and my brother with a Louisville slugger, we charge into the bedroom, and we see that every cupboard door is wide open, and one is still shaking from the force they'd been slammed. If I wasn't scared before, then I was seriously scared to crap now, and we decide to sweep the house to search for someone, and funnily enough, we find no one at all. Windows, doors locked. We end up sweeping the lounge that night and didn't really discuss it upon waking, almost as if we were both too embarrassed, and then spent the remainder of the day at a friend's house, pretty much both deadly silent. I have a few more incidents that have occurred, but these are the main ones that stand out. Funny thing is, I love that house and still have some of the best memories of my life there, and still enjoy going back to visit whenever I get the chance. But there was something else in that house that took great satisfaction in screwing with us all. Sorry for the long post, folks. I tried to condense it as much as I could. Voodoo on a Lonely Road, posted in the Paranormal subreddit by Tangerine9090. In high school, my friends and I spent most of our time driving around and getting high. I've always lived in North Dakota. If you've never been here, I'm guessing not, We have rolling hills, valleys, and a lot of flat country. Of course, we had our own set of urban legends, one of them being somewhere in the country is a place where a scary satanic cult meets to sacrifice animals and be weird and freaky. And I also heard stories from the Native American kids I went to school with about animal sacrifice and special cemeteries with animal spirits. I've never thought anything of it. We always took the same 45-minute drive on back roads around our city. That way we didn't have to worry about cops. Everything is desolate with farmers here and there, but there was a small patch of roadway that curved through trees and hills. It was always creepy. Just the way the trees crept over the roadway and basically being in the butt crack of two hills. We never had anything too spooky happen to us until one day we pulled off the road onto an approach and about 50 feet into some trees, not to be seen. We got out of the car to smoke a cigarette since the driver hated cigarette smoke. We pulled up by a fence, and as we're smoking, looking around, we saw something on the fence about another 50 feet down from us. We walked down there, and turns out there were 8 different animal skulls standing up on the fence. All different kinds. We could tell one was a deer, one was a fox or a badger, and a smaller one I could tell was some sort of gopher thing, and the smallest was a bird. All around there were piles of bones, all different sizes, sorted leg bones, rib bones, back bones. It was strange, but we chalked it up to freaky hunters or poachers who had some weird hobby or something. We weren't really freaked out at this point. We hung around there for another half hour or so, looking around for any more odd stuff. Didn't really find anything but some pheasant feathers stuck in the ground a few feet away. 2 days later, it's early evening in the summer. While coming around the curve, just before the approach we had pulled in 2 days before, our headlights hit a man in a black trench coat and a hood. As soon as our headlights hit him, he stops moving and just stands there. As best we could see, he just stood there until we had went around the next curve. We would see this guy every couple days. Most of the time, he would just keep walking. We never saw his face or what he was doing, walking around in the middle of literally nowhere. Then we started seeing the cat. In the same curve of the road, a cat just sitting off to the side, staring at the road like a creepy freak. The first day we just kept driving, but the second time we stopped and tried to call it to the car or scare it away from the road, but it would not look up. Its neck was hunched or bent over as if it was broken, really creepy. A few more days went by and we kept seeing creepy trenchcoat man and freaked out weird kitty. We kind of started feeling like we were being watched, so we switched our route, to avoid being potentially skinned and eaten or sacrificed or something. After about 2 weeks, we decided to go to that route because of the alternate route had heavier traffic and more houses, and we like to be alone. We take our time. The speed limit is 35, but we were going 25. As soon as we came around that curve, boom! Wall of paranormal. Brakes slam on, screaming and WTFing are happening. What I'm about to describe happened in about 1.5 seconds. My friend slams on the brakes because of a deer, but it wasn't a deer, not alive anyway. It was way up in the air, higher than a deer would jump. It was see-through, had kind of a green glow, much different than the light of our headlights. It had legs but no feet. Then a huge thing that I can only describe as a huge butterfly-type creature hit the windshield. It was so huge that the body hit right in front of me as the wings spanned all the way over to the edge of the driver's side. It had the same strange glow as the deer, but a bit brighter white, and obviously from the sound of hitting, was much more tangible, physical. We sat there, stopped in the road for a few seconds. making sure we all saw the same thing, which we did. Then, I shined my awesome Kyocera phone flashlight into the trees, hoping I would see a live deer and we were all just losing our minds or super high. But I saw nothing except for an animal skull on a post. It freaked us out, so we took off right away, but it looked like a cow skull. We went back the next day during the daytime. Didn't really find anything, but there were salamanders all over the road where our skid marks were. We had to run them over, there were so many. The road is closed now, I'm guessing because the creek kept overflowing and washing out the pavement. Large black animal in the middle of the road disappeared instantly, posted in the Paranormal subreddit by Araz Khan Hector. This happened about a year ago. I've never really thought to share it because it was more weird than scary. My mother and I were on our way back to pick up my sister from her job. She had to work a later shift, so it was around 12:45 a.m.-ish when we left home. It was a cold night, something that wasn't unusual in Central Texas, but definitely unexpected given the time of year. The highway we take is very dark. There are houses here and there, but mostly there are pine trees all along the road. This route always seemed to take the longest because of all the hills and curves. When it's dark, I do like to drive safe because it is rarely traveled, especially that late at night. My sister had found a ride home. We found out as we're nearing city limits where she worked, so we just decided to turn back. So, 20 miles wasted. Anyway, at this point, I just want to get home and sleep, so I speed on the way back. I turn on my brights just so there are no surprises. Halfway back, I see cars behind me. They're speeding too. Now, I'm a safe driver always. I've never been in an accident, always take precautions, but we're going down a hill and my mother is on the passenger side. The bottom of the hill was very dark, even with the high beams on. As we get closer to the bottom, we see what I can describe as a big black boar. And I mean, this thing was huge. It was standing a good 4 or 5 feet from the ground, pitch black, almost like a shadow. Even when my lights hit it, there is no reflection or change in its color. My mom sees it too. My first instinct is to not hit it. So stupid me makes the rash decision to swerve into the oncoming traffic lane. But there are no cars, thankfully. It takes me a few seconds to stabilize the car because we're going straight for a ditch on the side of the road. I pull into the shoulder lane and try to see it again, but instead I see the car that was behind me. It had distinct headlights, so I knew it was the same car. Anyway, I look back and see the car and the cars behind it just cruise through the spot where we saw the black object. Now believe me, there was no way this thing could have turned around and ran back to wherever it came from. With its size, it would have taken a good minute. And it didn't even flinch when I got close to hitting it. There's no way it could have run to the other side of the highway because it had a metal wall blocking the side. My mom and I both saw it. There's no doubt in my mind that we say a 3-dimensional object in the middle of my lane. I had adrenaline pumping, so I was feeling really good, like excited. But that night I was thinking about it before bed, that I could have died that night from swerving into oncoming traffic, and the car would have been totaled had I hit whatever mass that was on the road. My mom was very spiritual. We had just left a cult-like region, and to her it was an evil entity attacking us because we had just left God. I felt it was something evil, but we'd never experienced anything like it before or since. I'm not a religious person at all, but what I know, what I saw, wasn't of this world.